This is Mrs. Buckland. Are you ready to read Chapter 6 in our book, The Adventures According to Humphrey? If you're ready, grab your books and turn to page 52. Right is wrong. By the time class started the next morning, my mind was spinning as fast as my hamster wheel, thinking about pirates, sailboats, and the sailing contest. Once class began, however, there was too much going on to think of any of those things. The vocabulary test came first. I'd had boats on my mind all week, but not spelling. I took the test with my friends, sneaking into my sleeping hut to write in my notebook. But I managed to miss 3 words, including squall. For some reason, I thought there was a W in there, like sprawl or ball. I must admit, I had a little doze during math period. As soon as that was finished, Mr. Brisbane and Mrs. Morgenstern returned, and the sailboat building was in full swing again. I perched near the top of my cage and watched my friends at work. Oh, what lovely boats they were! The boat Miranda and Saya were working on really looked like a graceful swan. It was a sailboat that curved up high on each end. The front part looked like the head of a swan. The back part looked like the tail feathers. The girls were carefully gluing colorful feathers to the sides of the boat. It was quite a sight. AJ and Garth designed an impressive sailboat that had a skull and crossbones pirate flag, which is called the Jolly Roger, like the uncle in the book Mr. Brisbane was reading to us. Tabitha and Seth were building a Chinese junk. It had several sails. The biggest one was red, with a dragon painted on it. And the Viking ship designed by Art and Mandy was beginning to take shape. It was long and low, with a square sail with blue and white stripes. But the sailboat to end all sailboats was the one Kirk and Richie were building. It was still early, but I was already thinking they had a good chance of winning the race. Richie was standing at the hull, and Kirk was working on the sail. Scritch, 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 went the sandpaper. Richie was really throwing himself into his work, when suddenly Kirk pulled the boat out of his hand. Hold it, Richie! You have to sand it evenly. You're taking too much off this side, see? Kirk pointed to one side of the boat. Okay, you don't have to grab it like that. Richie, who was usually a happy-go-lucky guy, looked grumpier than I'd ever seen him before. Give it back! I'll sand it, said Kirk. I know how to do it. He started sanding while Richie glared at him. I know how to do it too, he told Kirk. Look, Richie, just let me do this. I can practically promise we'll win because I know just what to do, Kirk assured his partner. My dad and I built one of these last year. I can at least sand it, Richie protested, but Kirk didn't give in. I'll do it, Kirk said, and we'll get the prize. Kirk kept sanding. He didn't even seem to notice how upset Richie was. After a while, Kirk said, Hey, where do you take a stick boat? Who cares? Richie muttered. To the dock, Kirk replied with a big laugh. Get it? To the dock? Richie didn't answer, and he certainly didn't laugh. Gail didn't seem to be enjoying the assignment any more than Richie. Heidi painted the hull, while Gail was supposed to design the sail. Mrs. Morgenstern loved all of Heidi's ideas. Oh, look at those squiggles, look just like waves. That's a wonderful theme for a boat, she exclaimed. Then she turned to her daughter. Gail, why don't you do something like that for the sails? Gail didn't smile, and she didn't answer. Mrs. Morgenstern didn't seem to notice. Let your mind go wild. Think mermaids. Think seagulls. Think lighthouses. I don't believe Gail was thinking about any of those things. Luckily, Mandy had a question for Mrs. Morgenstern, who moved away from the table. Why don't you listen to your mom? Heidi asked Gail. If you do what she says, maybe we'll win the prize for the most beautiful boat. Gail stared at the big poster of a sailboat for a very long time. See that picture on the wall? She asked Heidi at last. Sure, Heidi answered. What does it look like? Heidi thought for a moment. Well, it's a wooden boat with a big white sail. Gale nodded. And doesn't it look beautiful sailing across the water with those white sails against the blue sky? I guess so, said Heidi. I don't think there's anything more peaceful than a sailboat with white sails, Gale explained. I hate to mess it up with mermaids and seagulls. But the contest, Heidi protested. Gale sighed. Okay, she said. I'll try. But it didn't sound as if she meant it. I was glad when Miss Bisbane had my friends put their boats away until school was over. After the students left, Mrs. Bisbane stayed to tidy up her desk. It was quiet for the first time all day. So I guess I dozed off. I wasn't asleep for long, though, because I was awakened by a familiar voice loudly saying, I think we need to talk about your field trip. The voice, which belonged to Mrs. Wright, said field trip in the same way someone might say bad smell or chicken pox. Oh, you mean the trip to Potter's Pond? Mrs. Bisbane asked. Her voice was friendly, but I know our teacher well enough to know that she was on her guard. With Mrs. Wright, it was always a good idea to be on guard. Yes, I see you filled the proper form, but I did have some questions, Mrs. Wright explained, and some concerns. I was concerned that Mrs. Wright was sticking her nose in where it didn't belong. What concerns? Mrs. Bisbane asked. Mrs. Wright leafed through a stack of papers she had in her hand. Safety concerns, she said. I need to know that you will have the required number of parent volunteers. Of course! That's never been a problem with this class, Mrs. Bisbane assured her. And all the students must have permission slips. No exceptions, Mrs. Wright said in an ominous tone of voice. Not one. Of course, Mrs. Bisbane said. I'm also concerned about water safety, Mrs. Wright continued. I'm not sure whether or not you'll need a lifeguard. If we need one, we'll get one, said Mrs. Bisbane. But the students aren't swimming. They're just sailing boats. Mrs. Wright shuffled her papers some more. Yes, well, these are model boats, I hope. I don't think Mrs. Wright saw Mrs. Bisbane roll her eyes, but I did. Very small model boats, she answered. Yes, I see, said Mrs. Wright. We'll also have to make sure the students are properly dressed. They will need sweaters, possibly boots. Mrs. Bisbane sighed. But Mrs. Wright kept on talking. Then there's the matter of food. All of the snacks must be on the approved list. She whipped out a piece of paper and handed it to Mrs. Bisbane. Mrs. Wright, our teacher said, I have been taking students on field trips for many, many years, and I've never had a problem so far. Mrs. Wright smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. Of course, she said, but regulations have changed over the years. I couldn't take it anymore. I just had to squeak up. Leave her alone, I shouted, even if it sounded like squeak, squeak, squeak. To her, I figured she could tell I wasn't happy. Boing, 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 Og chimed in. I know I sometimes complain about him, but Og always comes through when you need him. Goodness, what's that noise? Mrs. Wright asked. Are you sure those animals are all right? Mrs. Bisbane ignored that question. Just give me the forms and I'll make sure they're all filled out. Thank you, Mrs. Wright icily replied. It's for the children's safety, you know. After Mrs. Wright was gone, Mrs. Bisbane paced around the room, making huffing and puffing noises. I understood. She's wrong, I told her. Boing, Og agreed. Mrs. Bisbane stopped pacing in front of my cage. I shouldn't let her upset me. I think I understand her problem. I wasn't sure I wanted to understand Mrs. Wright, but I listened politely. The teacher's games to her students all day long. She teaches games to her students all day long, but she never has any fun, she said. Yes, I squeaked. She's no fun at all. Miss Bisbane chuckled. Poor woman. I have an idea of just how to handle her. She picked up her handbag and left the classroom, still smiling. I was glad Mrs. Bisbane had an idea. Her ideas are almost always good. I just wish she had told me what it was. For the rest of the week, my friends worked hard. Their boats looked good, but Richie and Gail didn't look any happier. Principal Morales stopped by room 26 one afternoon. He was wearing a tie that had little sailboats all over it. I've been hearing so much about these boats of yours, I had to come see for myself, he said. Everyone sat up straight, paid attention when Mr. Morales came to visit. After all, he was the most important person at Longfellow School. He was also a personal friend of mine. He took the time to look at each and every boat, and he always had something nice to say. They all look seaworthy, he announced when he was finished, and I should know. When I was your age, my friends and I spent half a summer building a raft. We couldn't wait to sail it on Potter's Pond. I guess I thought we would be like Huckleberry Finn. I'm sorry to say I had no idea who Huckleberry Finn was, but I sure wanted to hear what happened, Mr. Morales continued. That raft was heavy, and it took 6 of us to carry it. We slipped the raft into the water, hopped on board, and guess what happened? None of my friends seemed to know, so he answered the question himself. It sank straight down. It's probably still lying at the bottom of the pond today. Amazingly, he chuckled. Oh, no, Mrs. Bisbane, they explained. It was disappointing, Mr. Morales continued, but I can assure you the water in Potter's Pond is very shallow. Mrs. Wright will be happy to hear that, Miss Bisbane said. It's also very muddy. My shoes got stuck in the sludge, and I had to pull my feet out and go back with a shovel to dig them out. He chuckled again. My mama and papa were not pleased. Mrs. Bisbane's and my classmates laughed too. Just make sure you've got a boat that floats, the principal continued. On his way to the door, he passed by my cage. How's it going, Humphrey? He asked. Where's your boat? That's what I'd like to know, I squeaked back. He laughed, so I guess he didn't actually understand what I was saying. But when I went into my sleeping hut for a nap, I kept picturing a raft lying at the bottom of Potter's Pond, just like a sunken boat in Mr. Fitch's tank. On Friday, after Mr. Bisbane and Mrs. Morgenstern left, Mrs. Bisbane made a surprising and shocking announcement. Class, we were so busy with our boats this week, I forgot to arrange for anyone to take Humphrey home for the weekend. Whew! That statement took the wind out of my sails. For one thing, my classmates usually beg to take me home. For another thing, if nobody took me home, I'd get awfully hungry and thirsty, because I can't go without food or water as long as Ugg can. I can't believe we all forgot, Heidi said. Raise your hand, Heidi, Mrs. Bisbane reminded her, but don't worry, I'll be taking him home with me. I felt a lot better hearing that, but I felt worse when she said, I'm afraid there's no time for me to read aloud today. We'll continue our book on Monday. No time to read aloud? Just when Uncle Jolly Roger and Vic and Vi were in great danger? I was about to squeak up in protest when the bell rang. Class was over, the school day was over, and as soon as Mrs. Bisbane gathered up her jacket and books, we were on our way out of room 26 for the weekend. Farewell, matey, I called to Ugg. Boing, boing, he twanged in return. I wonder if that's how frogs say, aye, aye. Life at sea, it's either sink or swim, mateys. Sink or swim. From Jolly Roger's Guide to Life by L.C. Waters.